scared will be the truth of it.
Thank you.
All right, the court will note now the witness has been sworn. Before we begin with any testimony, I am going to inquire, Ms. Pastanis, because this trial has been live streamed and available fairly easily to observe online and also open to the public, I'm asking you whether or not you have watched any of the trial or anyone's testimony given during the trial.
No, I have
Oh.
not.
Okay, have you talked to anybody else about testimony they've given in trial?
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you for your responses. Ms. Blake, if you'd like to inquire on direct, you may do so.
Thank you, Your Honor. Will you please spell your name for the record?
My first name is Zulema, spelled Zulema. Last name Pastanes, Pastenes.
And Ms. Pastanis, do you know an individual named Lori Vallow?
Yes.
How do you know her?
I met her in 2018 at a meeting and at Melanie Gibbs' house.
So you knew Melanie Gibb prior to meeting Lori?
Yes.
And do you know approximately when that would have been, what year?
It was around 2018.
Sometime shortly after meeting Lori, did you end up traveling to a conference in St. George, Utah?
Yes.
And was that in October of 2018?
Yes.
Do you know an individual named Alex Cox?
Yes.
And how did you meet him?
I met him at Lori's house in November of 2018 after a conference.
And how about Chad Daybell?
I met him at a conference in Mesa in the summer of 2018.
When you met Chad in the summer of 2018, did you end up staying in contact with him at that time?
No.
And after meeting Lori in 2018, did you stay in touch with her?
Yes, it was brief contact at first, and then after the St. George conference, then we started having more of a friendship.
And in regards to that St. George conference, did you travel there with Lori?
Yes,
Were there some other women with you in the vehicle?
yes.
Do you recall who they were?
It was Michelle, and then another lady that I don't remember her name, Melanie Gibb, Lori, and I.
Do you recall being present when Lori and Chad met?
Yes, I was there.
Did you make any observations of the two of them together during that conference?
Yes, at first it was just they were just talking to each other, but then Lori was really being flirtatious towards him, and it appeared that she was really putting on the moves on him.
Did Chad seem receptive to that?
Yes, because he was very giggly and laughing a lot with her.
Were you aware if Lori was married?
Yes, I knew she was married.
And did you know whether or not Chad was married at that time?
I knew he was married.
Did you also travel home from the conference with Lori?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall her saying anything on the drive home?
Yes, she was driving on the way back, and Melanie Gibb and I were in the back seat, and she asked us to search the scriptures for certain things. The first things that she had us research was anything to do with James the Less. And then she also had us research on the scripture, and that was Doctrine and Covenants 77:11. And she had us read it out loud for her.
At that time, did you learn the significance of the James the Less?
Not at that time. She didn't expand on that time.
At some point later, did you learn the significance of that?
Yes, Lori said that Chad had told her that in a
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. Calls for hearsay.
Your Honor, it's a conspirator.
World.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
And I had asked you if at some point later you learned the significance of the James the Less.
Thank you. Yes, Lori said Chad had told her her previous lives, and in a previous life, she had been, they had been married, and he was James the Less, who was one of Jesus's disciples, and that she was his wife, and her name in that life was Helena.
And in regards to the other scripture reference, the D&C, did you ever learn the significance of that?
Yeah, it was in regards of the gathering of the 144,000, and Chad had told her that they were the angels that were supposed to gather the 144,000.
And when you say Chad told her they, is the they referring to Chad and Lori?
Correct.
And then you talked about meeting Alex Cox at a conference in November of 2018 in Arizona.
Yes.
Was Chad also present at that conference?
Yes.
Was Lori present?
Yes.
Was there anything, any other activity or get together held around that time?
Yeah, Lori had some people from the conference that were staying at her house. And after the conference, she had a gathering at her house, and she invited me to attend.
Did you in fact attend?
Yes.
While you were there, did you make any observations of Chad and Lori together?
The three of us went outside to the backyard together, and at one time, Lori started playing basketball and asked Chad to play basketball with her. It was very uncomfortable for me, so I felt like a third wheel. So I said that I was going to go inside the house, and Chad said that he was going to go inside the house with me. And Lori said, why are you going inside? Are you scared of me?
And you said you felt like a third wheel in that situation?
Yes.
At some point during that meeting, were you given a blessing?
Yes.
Who gave you the blessing?
Chad.
Who was present in the room where he gave you the blessing?
Chad, Lori, and I.
Do you recall getting that blessing?
Yes, I do.
Was there anything different about that blessing than what you were used to?
Yeah, usually when we receive a blessing, it is tailored to the specific need that you may have at that time. For example, if I was ill, the blessing will be for healing or strength to go through the illness. This blessing was different. It was almost as if Chad was looking into the future for me, and he was telling me how special of a person I was and how many gifts I had and all the things that I was going to do in the future. So it was very, very different than what I was used to.
And it sounds like talked about your future and how special you were. Was it pretty praising of you?
Yeah, there was a lot of praise during the blessing.
At some point during that gathering at Lori's house, do you recall Chad teaching, providing any teachings to the people that were at Lori's residence?
Yeah, so at one point, a couple of people had asked a couple of questions of Chad, and he sat in the middle of the room. I don't know whether it was a coffee table or ottoman in the middle of the living room, and all of us were sitting on the couch, and he started teaching the doctrine of translation.
And when you say all of us were sitting there, how many of you were there? Do you recall? Or approximately?
Probably around 6, 7 people.
Were there any other men there?
No, it's only women.
Charles wasn't present?
No, Charles had gone out of town and taking JJ with him so that Lori could have the house for guests.
And when the women sat there, Chad was the one talking about translation. Is that correct?
Yes,
Did Lori teach about translation?
no,
And do you recall some of what Chad was telling you about translation?
yes, he said that there was there were three phases to translation. The first was I'm sorry, I can't remember it correctly, but it was something like there was a physical part, there was a spiritual part, and the third part I can't remember. And then he said that each one of the parts, you went up on vibration and percentages, in that at each time when you hit 100, then you would move on to the next phase and on to the next phase.
Had you ever heard translation taught in that way?
No, never.
At that point in time, were you open to the idea?
Yeah, I was open to it.
Do you recall seeing Chad again in November around that same time? And maybe I'll narrow it down. Do you recall seeing Chad and Lori somewhere the day after the conference?
Thank you. Yes, the day after the conference, Lori was supposed to have some kind of a, I don't know, meeting or classes at her house. And I decided not to go there. And instead, I decided to go to the temple. And when I got to the celestial room, Lori and Chad were sitting together in the celestial room.
Did either of them say anything to you at that time?
They both stood up at the same time and they came over to me, towards me as soon as they saw me. And Lori said to me, not to tell anyone that I had seen them there. He said, please don't tell anybody that we are here.
Later in 2018, do you recall going to Melanie Gibbs' home and having Chad and Lori be there?
Yeah, there was Lori and Gib had started a podcast I believe, and Chad was going to be a guest for their podcast on that day.
And I said later in 2018. Do you recall, was it early 2019 or later in 2018? Do you recall?
I don't recall when it was.
But sometime after November of 2018?
Yes, it was after the conference.
And would it be fair to say that it was before February of 2019?
Judge,
Correct.
this is becoming leading objection.
Okay, well, it was untimely, but it was leading, Ms. Blake.
So at that podcast at Gibbs' house, Chad and Lori were present, you said?
Yes.
Did anything happen after the podcast?
Yeah, Chad said that he wanted us to go to lunch because he had some information to give me during the lunch.
And did you in fact go to lunch?
Yes, I did.
Who else was present at the lunch?
Lori, Gibb, Chad, and I.
Did Chad end up telling you anything at that time?
Not at the time. For some reason, Lori and Chad didn't want Gibb to hear what he had to say to me. So during the lunch, he said that he had some things that he wanted to share with me and that he would call me later to let me know what that was.
And did you in fact talk to him later?
Yes,
And did he share something with you?
yes.
And can you tell me a little bit about what he shared with you?
He told me that he was able to read people's past lives and he wanted to give me, I guess it was like a reading of what my past lives were. And so he gave me all the times that I had been upon the earth before. He told me who I was, about when it had been. And then he also gave me a rating of, I think it was something like a 4.2 light or something similar to that.
And Your Honor, I have what's been marked as State's Exhibit 54A. I have a copy for counsel, a courtesy copy for the court, and then the exhibit.
Very well.
And may I have the witness shown the exhibit?
You may.
Ms. Pastenis, do you recognize this?
Yes,
Is this something that you created?
yes.
Did you create this sometime after Chad had talked to you about the prior lives?
Yes, this was something similar to what he had given me on that day. This is what Lori and Chad were teaching in regards to creations. It
And I'm going to stop you just briefly, Your Honor. I'm going to move for admission of State's Exhibit 54A.
Any objection?
Judge, I guess for demonstrative purposes, it's fine.
Ms. Blake? Are you moving to admit for demonstrative purposes?
No, I'm moving to admit as an exhibit. Ms. Pastenis has said she created this based off the teachings of Chad and Lori.
Right, so it's not being offered demonstrative, just as an exhibit, so any objection on that?
No, Judge, if it's understood that she created this, I'm fine with that.
Very well. The exhibit 54A is admitted.
And Your Honor, permission to publish, please.
You may publish.
And Ms. Pastenis, I apologize. I cut you off there. I think you were starting to explain what we were seeing here. Can you please do so?
Um, so Chad and Lori were teaching that in one realm of creations, there could be 5 different worlds to which one person could come to. So on this one, for example, it shows that there is one realm and realm of creations on the left-hand side. And as you can see, it has 5 circles. So each one of those ones would be a world. And to the left, I have a arrow showing the spirit world. And one person could come to any of these worlds. And he had said that I had come to the 3rd world within this creation 5 times. To the 4th world had come 4 times. And to the 5th world, which will be the earth, which was also the lowest and the darkest of the worlds within this creation, that I had come to this earth 4 times.
And I also see a note there, Brother H.F. Jesus. Could you explain what that was?
Yeah, one time Chad had said that he was the brother of Heavenly Father and Jesus, and that in another creation, he had been the Holy Ghost.
And I also see a circle there with the word limbo. Could you explain what that represents?
Later on, they started teaching that a person could become let me back up. When a person passes away, that there was a small time where the body is still a viable body and it could be occupied by a dark spirit or a demon, and that because the body no longer had the spirit that was originally there, but it was being occupied by a demon, that then that spirit could not move to the spirit world, that it would go into a limbo.
So the original spirit occupying the body would go to limbo.
Correct.
And when you say they were teaching, who is the they?
Chad and Lori.
Had you ever heard anything taught like that before?
No.
At that time, were you open to the idea?
Somehow it was really different to me. I've never heard anything like that before. I was sort of open to it. Had you heard of some of the concepts before of prior creations or multiple probations? I mean, I've heard some things being said about reincarnation and things like that, but never in this manner.
Your Honor, I have what's been marked as State's Exhibit 54. Again, I have a courtesy copy for Your Honor, the exhibit, and a copy for counsel. And if I may have the witness handed a copy.
You may.
And Ms. Pastenis, can you please just look through those pages?
Have a brief sidebar with counsel, please.
Yes. Ms. Pastenis, have you had a chance to look those pages over?
Yes,
And do you recognize those?
yes, I do.
Where did they come from?
These pages come from a journal I used to keep.
And would you have been, do you remember approximately, well, let me back up. Do these contain information provided to you by Chad and Lori?
Yes,
So would you have started putting this in sometime after having met Chad and Lori?
yes.
And do you know when you quit making these journal entries in particular?
This journal was probably finished around 2019.
Thank you. And Your Honor, I would move for admission of State's Exhibit 54.
Any objection?
Foundation Judge, 2019 is a long year. I should be afforded some opportunity as to when these entries were made.
All right, response, Ms. Blake?
Your Honor, Ms. Pastenis has identified them as her journal entries. She's indicated they would have been made in the year 2019. I think that is sufficient foundation for purposes of identifying the document and substantiating it.
All right, the court's considered the objection and the response. I am going to overrule the objection and permit the admission of Exhibit 54 based on foundation laid by the witness.
And Your Honor, permission to publish.
You may publish.
And Ms. Pastenis, if I can draw your attention down there to the bottom, it says 3 phases. I think you were talking a little bit about that.
Yes.
Can you tell us what that represents?
So this is what Chad was teaching on that evening of after the the preparing of people, November of 2018, he said that the translation phases were emotional, spiritual, and physical. Each one of them would go from 0 to 100%, and vibrations will go from 0 to 1,000%, I think it was. And it also shows that around 80%, there is a big test in order for you to get to the 100%, and then you move on to the next phase.
And in the time you knew Chad Daybell, would he in fact tell you vibration levels that you had?
Yes,
And did he tell you that you were going through the translation process?
yes.
And we'd previously seen another diagram where you talked about creations. Can you tell us what this is representative of?
So this right here is representative of one of those circles on that entire creation. So for example, this right here will be all of the times that a person comes to one of the worlds. So for example, this one would be Earth. And this is how a person moves up in a spiritual ascend and becomes either 1 or 2 or 3, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and so on the light side, or as I have on the left-hand side, the same happens for a person if they become dark.
And so when Chad was telling you this stuff, I think you said you were given a rating of 4.2 light.
I believe that's what it was.
Who would give those ratings?
Chad would.
Who could discern light and dark?
Chad did.
And Your Honor, may I hold on to this exhibit? I intend to publish a few more, just not right now.
You may. Thank you.
Miss Pastenes, do you recall where you went to lunch with Melanie and Chad and Lori?
Firebird's restaurant in Gilbert, Arizona.
Sometime after that first lunch, did you go to a lunch there again?
Yes.
Who was present at that lunch?
Gib, Lori, and I.
Do you recall approximately when that would have been?
I believe it was around February of 2019.
At some point, did Lori end up leaving Arizona?
Yes,
Do you recall approximately when she left Arizona?
it was after that lunch. So probably February, March.
And Chad was not present during that lunch, is that correct?
Correct. He was not there.
During that lunch, did Lori start telling you anything?
Yes, she made a diagram similar to the one that that I had written down, and she went over the creations and the worlds, and also the ratings of people.
And Your Honor, I have what's been marked as State's Exhibit 54B. I have a copy for the court, counsel, and a courtesy copy for Your Honor.
Thank you.
And if I may have the witness shown the exhibit.
You may.
Miss Pastenes, what did Lori draw the diagram on?
It was on the receipt of the lunch.
And when you look at these pages, do you recognize them?
Yeah, this is a copy of the back of the receipt because I remember I kept the receipt.
And Your Honor, I would move for admission of State's Exhibit 54B.
No objection.
All right, Exhibit 54B is admitted.
And if I may have that for publication.
Yes.
And so you said this is indicating the same type of information?
Yes.
Is this also about your prior lives?
No, I don't believe that this one is, excuse me, this one has to do again with the eternal rounds up on the top. The five worlds that one can come to. And on the bottom part is how Chad used to rate people on whether they were light or dark. So you become a 1. So we're reading from the bottom up. You become a 1 when you're in the spirit world. And then you become a 2 when you are born for the first time. And then you become a 3 when you come again, and so on and so forth. And then she put the numbers of people that would be a 2 or a 3, and so on and so forth upon the earth currently. So, for example, there's I think it says billions of 2s, billions of 3. Only 1,200 people are 4.1 light, 4.1 light, excuse me. There's only 7,000 4.2. There is only 700 4.3. And then there would be only 1/6 light, or only one person that is 6 dark on the opposite side.
So equal number of light and dark on each level.
Yes.
And then this was also part of that same receipt.
Yes.
And can you tell us what this is depicting?
So she, Lori at this time started explaining that there were councils. And so at the top would be Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ. Then right after that, there will be a council of 12, a council of 24, a council of 48, and then so on and so forth.
And do you know where Lori was getting her information?
All of this was being given to her by Chad.
And when we talked about those different creations, did Chad ever talk to you about the term exalted?
Yes.
And what did Chad explain to you when it came to being exalted?
So exaltation means that you have you have had a probationary time, and you have become a righteous person, spiritually minded, and that you are through the atonement of Jesus Christ, you are exalted, that means that you have earned or have a place in a celestial realm.
And had you heard that type of teaching before?
Yes, I have. And it is taught in the church that we can become exalted, but the way that Chad was teaching it was different. He was teaching that if you came in another world within that creation, within those 5 worlds, if you came in another world, let's say, for example, when I came in the 4th world 4 times, during that time, I had become exalted. Therefore, I had already have my place in a celestial realm. So when I came to this earth this time, I didn't need to go through a probationary time. My place was already there. I already had it. So it wasn't really a probationary time for me to be here that I had, for example, come to just help and assist the work of God.
And if you weren't in a probationary period, did that mean anything else? Or did you ever hear Lori or Chad say anything in relation to that?
Yeah, it would mean Chad said that there wouldn't be a need for repentance if you had already been exalted in another world, that you did not need to go through a probationary time because you had already proven yourself in another world. Therefore, it didn't count for you. So Lori used to say all the time, it doesn't count for me. Or she would say, for example, to me or to other people, she was saying, it doesn't count for you either. And she would do it in such a way where she would hit something and she would say, doesn't count for me.
And again, where was Lori getting her information?
All this information is coming from Chad.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask for permission to publish some additional pages from State's Exhibit 54.
You may.
And I think on that back of the receipt, we saw something kind of similar to this, but can you explain what this is?
So again, these are the councils. The top will be where Jesus is at the top. Then there will be a council of 12, council of 24, and there will be a council of 48. And Chad and Lori would have been the leaders of the council of 48. And Lori and Chad were teaching that, for example, me, Serena, Christina, and all of these people that are listed here are also part of that council. And 24 here would mean that 24 are here upon the earth.
And when we see the 2 lines coming down, is that again a depiction of light and dark?
Correct.
So the light and dark balance out.
Correct.
At some point, and we see this list here, and I guess let me clarify, when Chad designated you as part of that 48, was that on the light side?
Yes.
And I also see Serena and Christina also with you.
Yes.
So also on the light side.
Yes.
At some point, did their designations change?
Yes, at one time, Chad said that Serena was no longer, and that's the reason why I have a question mark right there, because Chad had said that Serena was no longer light, and that she was moving towards the dark side, and that she was very, the way he said it to me was that she was a very high, like a high priestess, but she was becoming dark, so therefore she would be a very dark high priestess.
So people could move from light to dark.
That's what he was teaching, yes.
What preceded Serena moving to the dark?
Judge, could I have some foundation as to how she knows all this?
If you know what preceded Serena being deemed dark or potentially moving to the dark.
At the time, Chad didn't give any explanation of why Serena was moving towards this. It was a mystery to me at the time. But later on, I found out that Serena had questioned Chad about his teachings of no need for repentance, because to her, that was a concept that she couldn't understand and she couldn't believe. So she questioned him, and then he deemed her dark.
And at that lunch at Firebirds with Melanie Gibb and Lori, did you learn anything about Charles?
Yes, this was the first time that Lori talked about someone being possessed by a dark spirit or a demon. This first time that I heard the idea of someone passing away and having this small window of time where a dark spirit or a demon could come into the body and take over the body. And she said that that's what had happened to Charles, and that Charles was now possessed by a dark spirit or demon named Ned.
Had you heard the term possession before?
Yeah, I had read about it in the scriptures before.
Had you heard it talked about in the way Lori was describing it?
No, not at all.
And do you know where Lori got that information?
That information came from Chad.
Had you talked to Lori about any problems she was having with Charles?
Previous to that, one time during the St. George conference, she said that they were having some financial issues, but other than that, she hadn't said that they had any issues.
After learning that Charles was dark, at some point, did you hear the term castings?
Yes. Lori said that she wanted us to meet and she wanted to teach us something, and she also said that she wanted us to do a casting out on Charles.
Did you in fact end up meeting up with Lori?
Yes. Um, we had a meeting at my house. It was late March of 2019.
Do you know where Lori was living at that time?
She was in Hawaii.
Do you recall who was present at your house
Yes,
and who was there?
it was Christina, Nicole, Serena, Gib, and Lori and I.
And would this have been before Serena was determined to be dark?
Yes.
Did Lori explain how the casting would work?
Um, yes, she said that we needed to hold hands, and she gave everyone a different part to say, and we were to just cast out the evil spirit.
And to be clear, when you're doing the casting, was Charles present?
No,
Was anything physically being done to Charles at that time?
no,
He wasn't there, no touching of Charles.
no.
Do you know where Lori learned about castings from?
In this way,
Yes.
she was learning all of this from Chad, and during that meeting, throughout the whole time, she was having communication with him as we were going through the whole casting.
So Chad wasn't present for the casting, but Lori would reach out to him.
Yes,
How did Lori determine if the casting was successful?
she had to call Chad to verify whether it was done correctly or not, or if it had worked.
And after that first casting, did Lori reach out to Chad?
Yes, she called them.
And what did Lori indicate Chad said?
She said that Chad said that it had worked and that we were successful on the casting.
Did you later learn anything in regards to Charles?
Yes, later on, she said that again, that Ned had been cast out and we had been successful at casting out, but then another dark spirit had come and taken over Charles's body. This time, the evil spirit's name was Garrett.
Did you end up participating in another casting on Charles?
Yes.
And do you recall who was at that next casting?
It was the same people, but this time Alex was there as well.
Did you learn why Alex was present at the second one, but not the first one?
At first, Chad and Lori had said that Alex was a first creation, only the first time that he had come to the earth. So he had not been in prior worlds. He had only come to this world, and this was his first time in this world. Therefore, he had a very low rating. I believe he was only like a 2 or something like that. And therefore he wasn't spiritually savvy. And then his rating changed. They said that they had found out that Alex had been in other worlds before, and that he had been exalted in other worlds before, and now his spiritual standing had changed.
And when you say they said that, is that Chad and Lori?
Correct.
So now that his spiritual status had changed, he was able to be at the casting?
Correct.
And you talked about assignments being given. Who would give those assignments?
Lori would.
Do you recall what Alex's assignment was?
He was always the warrior.
Did Alex seem to believe?
Yes.
Was that second casting successful?
Yes. Well, again, Lori called Chad to verify that he had been successful, and Chad said that he had been. And but then, just as the first time, later on, we found out that there was again that period of time where another spirit could come and possess the body, and that this time there was a very high dark spirit. There was this demon that had done this for hundreds of years and had done the same things hundreds of times or thousands of times, and that he was very experienced at doing this. And now Charles' body was possessed by a demon called Hyblos.
And while these castings were going on, was Lori with Charles? Sorry, let me back up. Not during the castings, but during that time frame, was Lori with Charles?
Only when we were doing castings for Hyblos, Lori had moved during their separation. When Lori went to Hawaii, Charles had moved to Texas, and Lori had moved back to Texas with him.
Did you ever ask her why she was with him if she thought he was possessed?
Well, yeah, it seemed really weird to me that after all the problems that they had had and all the fighting that happened and the separation and him being possessed or whatever, that she would moved over to Texas and go live with him.
And what did she tell you when you asked?
She said she needed to take care of some finances, of her finances.
During the time of the castings, do you recall a group, the Seven Gatherers?
Yes.
Can you tell me what the Seven Gatherers was?
It was a group of girls that would get together to sometimes to share information, but we also got together to do castings together via Zoom while Lori was in Texas.
And did you all share an email
Yes,
and you could share information?
yes,
Do you recall who was part of the Seven Gatherers?
yes. It was Christina, Nicole, Serena, Gibb, Melanie Pulaski, Lori, and I.
So only women were part of that group.
Correct.
Where would you get your information from? Or the women of that group, who would they turn to for answers?
Um, most of the time we would turn to Lori for answers. There was sometimes when I would reach out directly to Chad for answers as well.
And again, do you know where Lori would get her information?
She always got her information from Chad.
And Your Honor, I'm going to ask to publish more of States 54.
You may publish.
And Ms. Pastenis, can you tell us what we're seeing on this page? Looking first to the top part.
Yes, so this would be the order in which a casting would be performed. The first one would be by the order of the priesthood. Then 2 would be the spell and encapsulate, cast out, burn, scorter and sealed. Then the spell, banish, expel, eject, purge, and evict.
So was this all part of the casting, or was this an order of things that you'd try first?
This was done during the casting.
And on this page, are we essentially seeing the same 7 steps?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And again, when you were participating in the castings, was the person physically present that you were trying to cast for?
No, we were in Arizona. Lori was in Texas and Charles was in Texas.
And if a casting was ultimately successful, did you learn what would happen to the body?
The body will die.
Were the teachings of Chad and Lori, were they evolving?
Yes.
Would you get more information or different information over time?
Yes, it was at the beginning it was like just a small part of information, and then there was more given in different things, and then more given in different things being taught.
And you were talking about the castings on Hiplos or Iplos.
Mhm.
Do you recall if those castings were successful?
They never were.
Did you end up learning that Charles was killed?
Yes,
Do you know approximately when Charles was killed? Do you recall?
it was July 11th of 2019.
Do you recall how you learned of Charles' death?
Yes, Lori asked me to come to her house the day after, and that's when she told me.
When you saw Lori the day after, how did she seem to you?
She seemed quiet, perhaps a little somber.
Was Alex present when you went to Lori's house?
Yes, he was there.
And how did Alex seem?
Normal.
When you say Lori seemed somber, did she seem sad?
No.
Did Lori or Alex tell you what had happened?
Yes, Lori told me that Charles had come over to pick up JJ to take him to school. And when he went to put him in the car, he had left his phone inside of the house. And Lori picked up his phone and started looking through it. And Charles came back inside and demanded his phone. Lori didn't want to give it to him, so they started fighting over the phone. And Alex was there, and Tylee was there as well. Tylee walks into the room with a bat, asking or telling Charles to leave. Charles took the bat away from Tylee and hit Alex on the back of the head with the bat. And Alex took his gun out and shot Charles.
You said Alex seemed normal.
Yes.
Did you talk to Alex about what he thought in relation to Charles?
Yeah, I asked him how he was doing. I asked him, "Are you okay?" And he asked me why. I said, "Well, because you just shot somebody yesterday." And he looked at me and he said,
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. It's hearsay.
Co-conspirator, Your Honor.
Based on the response of the state, I find it is an exception, so that's overruled.
Alex said, Zulema, he was a zombie.
Did Alex seem to truly believe what Chad was telling him?
100%.
Do you recall seeing Chad that next month or in August of 2019?
Yes.
And where was Chad when you saw him?
He came to Arizona and he came to Lori's house and he was staying there.
And did you have an opportunity to observe he and Lori together?
Yes.
And how did they seem?
They were physically romantic. They were holding hands. She was sitting on his lap. They were hugging and touching each other like girlfriend and boyfriend.
Had you ever seen them that physical with each other before?
This was the first time.
Do you know if Tammy was still alive?
Tammy was still alive.
Did you ask Chad about that at all?
Yeah, I asked because he was still married and I asked why they were together like that when he was still married, and he said that they had been married to each other 7 times before in other lives, and they had been exalted before together in other worlds, and that they were to be together in this life because they had a mission together. and that their spouses would understand because of the mission that they needed to complete. And then the topic of it didn't count for them again came up. And this is another of the times when Lori said, it doesn't count for me.
So did Chad and Lori say they'd both been exalted before?
Yes.
Was there any indication that Tammy may die?
Chad said that Tammy was going to die early, and that he had related before that he had a portal in his house where he would get information or communication from the spirit world, where he would get instructions and information and knowledge, and that through this portal he was getting information such as that Tammy was going to die soon.
Had you ever heard of portals in the way Chad was talking about them?
No.
Do you know at any point if Lori had a portal?
Yes, she said that that Chad had created a portal for her in her closet, and this is where they would communicate with each other.
And you said Chad talked about that he and Lori had been together in other lives.
Yes.
Did they talk about what their mission was here on this earth?
Their mission in this life was to build Zion, and they were to gather the 144,000.
And was the indication they were supposed to gather the 144,000?
Correct.
So would that indicate that they're somewhere in the leadership?
Yes, they did say that they were the leaders of that council.
Did Chad ever talk to you about the Church of the Firstborn?
Yes.
What did he relate to you about that?
So he said that he was the head of the Church of the Firstborn, and that he was the one who was gathering those who belonged to that church.
And at the time you were there in August, were JJ and Tylee there?
Yes.
Do you recall anyone talking about JJ dying young or dying soon?
Yeah, during this meeting, Chad said that JJ was going to die young, that he was probably going to die soon, and that he was going to come right back to Earth as Colby's son.
And who is Colby?
Lori's son.
And Your Honor, I'm just looking at the time. Would you like to take the morning break now? Or would you like me to continue a little further?
Maybe just 5 or 10 more minutes.
At that meeting in August, do you recall getting a blessing?
Yes.
Who gave you the blessing?
Chad.
Do you recall some of what he said in the blessing?
Yes, in this blessing, he said that he was speaking from the things that Jesus Christ was telling him to say, and that I needed to move to Rexburg. And that I was going to get married soon.
At that time, did you have any ties to Rexburg?
None.
Do you recall Alex receiving a blessing?
Yes, I was not there for his blessing because I got there late. But Alex told me about what Chad had told him in his blessing.
What did Alex relay to you?
He said that he had also told him to move to Rexburg and that he was going to be a warrior and that he was going to be one of the warriors that was going to fight because there was going to be invasions from other countries into the United States, and that Rexburg was going to be a place of safety, and that Alex was going to play a key role in being one of the warriors and defenders of that area.
How did Alex seem to feel about that information?
He bought into it 100%, so much that Chad was leaving the following day to go back to Rexburg, and right then, and then Alex booked a flight to come back to Rexburg with Chad so that he could see the sights and see where he was going to be moving.
Did Chad share with you why Rexburg? Was there something special about Rexburg?
Yeah, he said that it was a place of refuge. He said that the church had designed this area to be like a second headquarters.
During that August visit, did you observe Chad and Alex together?
Yeah, they were talking to each other and like they were acting as if they were, good friends.
Had you seen that type of interaction between the two of them before?
No,
And this is shortly after Charles' death?
yes, this is right after Charles passed away.
And who was it that could discern light and dark if someone was light and dark?
Chad,
At some point, did you hear the term zombie?
yes.
Do you recall who introduced that term or where you heard it?
I think the first time I ever heard it was at that lunch with Gib at Fireburst in February of 2019. But then the term kept coming up in regards to people being possessed.
Did Alex believe that there were zombies?
Oh, yeah.
Did Alex ever say anything to you about what he would want done if he became a zombie?
He told me, Zulema, if I ever turn into a zombie, just shoot me in the face.
Did you learn that Lori eventually moved to Rexburg?
Yes.
Do you know who moved with her when she went?
Tylee, JJ, and Alex.
Do you recall approximately when she moved?
It was at the end of August of 2019.
Were you dating Alex at the time he moved?
We had gone on one date.
At some point, well, let me back up. Did Lori ever talk to you about how she was going to financially support herself?
I asked her, what are you going to do in Rexburg? You don't have a job. What are you going to do there? How are you going to support yourself? And she told me that Tylee was receiving Social Security benefits because her father had passed away before she was 18. And JJ was receiving Social Security benefits because of Charles's death. And since her and Charles had been married for more than 10 years, she was also receiving Social Security benefits. Therefore, she was receiving close to $6,000 a month, and that's what she was going to live off.
Did she ever talk to you about Charles' life insurance?
Yeah, several times.
What did she tell you in regards to that?
She told me that if anything ever happened to Charles, that he had $1 million life insurance, and she was the beneficiary of it.
Did you learn if she ultimately got that money?
She later on told me that she was very, very upset that Charles had changed the beneficiary of the life insurance and before he died, and that she was no longer going to get the $1 million.
And again, when you were doing castings on Hiplos, Lori had told you that she got back with Charles to figure out finances.
Yeah, her finances.
Was that shortly before his death?
Yes, this is when she moved to Texas.
After Lori and Alex and the kids moved, did you end up visiting Rexburg, Idaho?
Yes, early September.
And when you came to visit in September, was that September of 2019?
Correct.
Where did you stay?
In Alex's apartment.
Did you visit Lori's apartment as well?
Yes.
While you were there, did you see Tylee?
No, she was not there.
Did you ask Lori where she was?
Yes, I did. When you got to be the evening, I asked her, I said, hey, where's Tylee? And she said, well, she had to be free, meaning Tylee had to be free. And when I went to ask her to explain what that meant or what she meant by that, she put her hand against my face and said, don't ask.
Did she ever provide you any additional information as to where Tylee was?
No.
Did you see JJ while you were there?
Yes, he was there.
Do you recall anyone ever talking to you about Tylee being dark?
Yeah, before Lori moved to Rexburg, she had mentioned a couple of times that Tylee had been possessed by a dark spirit named Hillary
Do you know where Lori received that information?
from Chad.
Do you recall hearing anything about JJ being attacked by demons?
Yeah, before they moved to Rexburg, Lori was saying that in the middle of the night, JJ was being attacked by dark spirits, and that they couldn't get him. So they would be going into the JJ's service dog.
And when you say they couldn't get him, the dark spirits couldn't get JJ?
Mhm,
So they
yes.
went into the dog?
mhm.
Do you know what happened with JJ's service dog?
I believe Lori gave him back to where he had been trained. She got rid of him.
Did you ever hear JJ referred to as dark or possessed?
Um, after Gib visited Rexburg, when she came back, I went to her house and she told me that during her trip, she had found out that JJ was now possessed by a dark spirit and that he had become a zombie.
And Gibbs' trip would have been after your trip to Rexburg, is that correct?
Yes,
Did you see Chad while you were in Rexburg?
yes,
And do you recall, well, let me back up. Was Tammy still alive during this time?
yes.
Do you recall being asked to do something so Chad could come over?
Yes, he asked me to live and to send him a text asking him to come and see me speak about my recent trip and that I was inviting him to come and see me speak.
And did you in fact do that?
Yes, I did.
And did Chad come over?
Yes,
Did you have a chance to observe Chad and Lori together?
yes.
And what were their interactions?
They were holding hands, they were hugging, sitting on the couch with their legs entangled, just very physically romantic.
While you were there, did you also take a trip to Mesa Falls?
Yes,
Do you recall who went?
it was Alex, Lori, Chad, and I.
Did you make any observations of Chad and Lori on that trip?
Yes, they were. Alex was driving. I was sitting in the front seat, and Chad and Lori were in the back seat, and they were hugging and kissing and romantically physical.
While you were visiting, did you receive a blessing?
Yes,
Who gave you the blessing?
Chad.
And do you recall some of what he said in the blessing?
Yes, in this blessing, he said, Jesus Christ is standing right next to me, and he is saying this to you. All of your sins are forgiven, and he is telling you that it is time for you to leave Babylon and to move to Rexburg.
Had you previously indicated you didn't think you wanted to move to Rexburg?
Plenty of times, but they kept on insisting on being very forceful that I moved to Rexburg.
And at this time, were you actually dating Alex Cox?
We were being friends and getting to know each other, so not dating.
Did Chad also give Alex a blessing?
Yes,
And do you recall some of what was in Alex's blessing?
he also started the same way, saying that Jesus Christ was standing right next to him and that he was giving him the words to say to Alex. And he was telling him that he was very pleased with him and that all of his sins were forgiven.
How did Alex react to that blessing?
He started sobbing.
And Your Honor, it would now be a good time to break.
I believe it would. Okay, we'll take the mid-morning recess at this time. Let's go just under half an hour if we can. So about 10:35 or so, we'll come back on for additional testimony.
All right, please.